Good evening. My name is Mark Barnico, and I'm the Executive Director of the University of Chicago Francis and Rose Yuen Campus in Hong Kong. Welcome to China on the Move. If audience members have questions to submit tonight, you can do so through the question and answer button by first registering on Zoom. We'll wrap up tonight's program with a poll and more information about upcoming events you may be interested in, so please be sure to stay tuned until the very end. Tonight, we'll hear more about the policies in the Greater Bay Area on multiple fronts from all of our speakers. Let's get started with a brief introduction of our moderator tonight. Ken Pomerantz is back with us this evening. He's our faculty director of the University of Chicago Yuen campus here in Hong Kong, and he'll moderate tonight's webinar. Professor Pomerantz is a distinguished university professor of modern Chinese history and in the college. Professor Pomerantz's work focuses mostly on China, and he's also very interested in comparative and world history. Most of his research is in social, economic, and environmental history, but he's also worked on state formation, imperialism, religion, gender, and many other topics. Ken, thanks for joining us again tonight, early morning your time. I'll hand the stage over to you to introduce our speakers and get started with the conversation.
Thanks very much, Mark, and hello, everybody. We have a very distinguished panel tonight. If I were to list all their honors, we would run out of time. So I will introduce them just very briefly and in alphabetical order. They will actually speak in reverse alphabetical order though. So first we have Professor Andrew Chan, who was appointed president of the Greater Bay Area Business School in July 2020. He is also an emeritus professor in the Department of Marketing at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And he was director of CUHK's executive MBA program from 2002 to 2020 and head of Shaw College from 2010 to 2020. Professor Chan has also been very active in public service. From 1999 to 2005, he was chair of the Hong Kong Consumer Council. And from 2004 to 2010, he was chair of the Hong Kong Deposit Protection Board. He was a member of the Electoral Affairs Commission from 2005 to 2012, chairman of the Chinese Medicine Council from 2011 to 2017, council member of the Hong Kong Institute of Education, and the Hong Kong University of Hong Kong. Currently, he's a member of the Social Enterprise Advisory Committee and the Energy Advisory Committee. On top of that, he is the advisor to the Quality Tourism Services Association as a governing council. He's also a member of the College Council of Tuayu College, and in recognition of his extensive and distinguished public service, he was appointed as a Justice of the Peace in 2005 by the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region Government and was awarded the Silver Bauhinia Star in 2007. So thanks very much for being with us. Next, we have Professor Richard Hu. He is a University of Macau Development Foundation Distinguished Professor and Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences at the University of Macau. Before joining there, he was professor and head of the Department of Politics and Public Administration at HKU. He was a John Olin Fellow in National Security Studies at Harvard, an IGCC postdoc fellow at University of California, San Diego, and a CNAPS fellow at the Brookings Institute. He has published 6 books and over 100 journal articles and book chapters, and his latest publication is a co-authored book entitled Contesting Revisionism, China, the United States, and the Transformation of the International Order, that came out from Oxford University Press in 2021. Last but by no means least, Professor Anthony G. Oye, who is the chair professor of urban planning and geographic information systems at the University of Hong Kong. He's a member of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the Hong Kong Academy of Sciences and a fellow of the World Academy of Sciences. He is the Chan To Han Professor in Urban Planning and Design and chaired professor of the Department of Urban Planning and Design and director of its GIS Research Center. His main areas of specialization are urban planning and development in Hong Kong and China, and the applications of GIS, Geographic Information Systems, as a planning and management support system for smart cities. He received the UN Habitat Lecture Award in 2008 for his outstanding and sustained contribution to research, thinking, and practice in the human settlements field. He has been founding Secretary General of the Asian Planning Schools Association and chairman of the Hong Kong Geographical Association, vice president of the Commonwealth Association of Planners, vice president of the Hong Kong Institute of Planners, and chairman of the Geographic Information Science Commission of the International Geographic Union. He's published over 30 books and monographs and over 180 journal articles and book chapters. And he's been doing research on the development of the Pearl River Delta in particular since the 1980s. He has just completed a policy innovation coordination office strategic public policy research project on In Search of New Economic Cooperation Models between Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area. So we have an extremely well-informed and thoughtful panel tonight. I will leave it to them. Professor Ye, we will start with you.
Now I'm going to share with you some of the latest development in the Greater Bay Area, right? And so when we are looking from the satellite, this is the purplish color is the urban area, but actually physically it's the same, right? It's one piece of land, but actually it belongs to so-called the 9+2. That is this 9 cities in the Pearl River Delta, plus the Hong Kong and Macau special administrative region, and this is called the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. So why do we get this name? This is mainly because in February 18th, 2019, roughly 3 years ago, the Chinese government announced this outline development plan for the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. And this is basically trying to use Guangzhou and also Shenzhen and also Hong Kong and Macau, the 4 together as 4 engines to push, the Greater Bay Area forward. And one of the things that we have to understand is that basically this Greater Bay Area plan is trying to help Hong Kong and Macau, right? So there is one chapter called Chapter 10. It's basically trying to tell people, well, how the Greater Bay Area is going to have more closer cooperations. But that is basically nothing new, right? In 2001, right, 2001, actually the Hong Kong government at that time, the chief executive was Mr. Dong Jinhua. Well, he already have this in the policy address, trying to have bigger cooperation with the Pearl River Delta, right? And at that time, we also at the university, we organized a lot of conferences trying to talk about developing a competitive Pearl River Delta, building a competitive Pearl River Delta, cooperation, the coordination and planning, right? And actually, we even organized conferences, seminars in Guangzhou, for example. This one is on the transport planning, which is very important for the PRD development, right? In Guangzhou. And the Hong Kong government also really pay a lot of attention. In 1997, actually, they already have a commission on strategic development. And also they, in 2003, they talk about the 4 pillar industries, basically financial services, tourism, trading and logistics, professional and producer services as the engine for growth of Hong Kong. And also we have this individual visitor scheme in 2003, and also the so-called SIPA, the closer economic partnership arrangement, right? And also even in the Pearl River Delta, they are doing a lot of planning. Then the question is, why we discussing this again, right? I think the answer is very simple. This is Chinese, right? For those who read Chinese. In English, it's very simple. The tide has changed, right? So what has been changed? Now, the Hong Kong PRD cooperations actually exist in 1980 when China opened the door for economic reform and open policy, and we developed what is known as the fund shops at factory relationships. A lot of the factories in Hong Kong moved their manufacturing part to the Pearl River Delta because of the cheap land and also cheap labor. And so at the same time, Hong Kong benefit from these productions, and they the shop itself basically is the logistic industries, the business services, etc. With our connections with the outside world, and also Hong Kong used to be the world factory in the 1970s, right? And based on this, we are able to work together. One thing that you have to remember, there is no government involvement. It's all by the private sector. Okay, so there is a basic transformations in the Pearl Delta, and we call it rural industrialization without an urbanism, right? And basically, a lot of these industries are set up in these towns itself. And Hong Kong, because of this growth in the Pearl Delta, benefit to and then become the Asia's world cities. Now, does the front shops back factories model still working, right? Now, actually, since the 2000 onwards, actually this model is already not working. Well, so this is the trend that we are having in Hong Kong. We actually lost out all the industries already. No more industries. It's all in terms of business services because of the transformations from manufacturing to business services. Okay, so we become the Asia world cities. But if we look into the Pearl Delta, you will find that in the early days, in the 1980s, right, you will see 92% of the investment was from Hong Kong, and gradually 1995 declined to 74%, and by 2000 it's already 60%. So you can see the gradual, not so importance of Hong Kong in the Pearl Delta already. And in 2005, we did a studies talking about how the industries in the Pearl Delta are using Hong Kong services. And normally, if this model is working, we expect that there will be a lot of people, industries using Hong Kong, right? But unfortunately, you will find that only 10% of the mainland factories are using Hong Kong services. Most of them are using the PRD, right? Even for the Hong Kong firms, these are the Hong Kong firms, only 30%. They are still using a lot of PRD for different reasons, right? And so if we compare the so-called competitive advantage of our producer services, in year 2003, the Hong Kong, we have roughly 1 million people working in this area. The PRD cities is 0.8 million. But by now, right, basically you will see that by 2015, right, they already have 1 million people more than us, right? And so you can see basically, and also they're developing a lot of central business districts, for example, like the Zhejiang New Town, the Zhuhai Hengqin, and the Shenzhen Qinhai, right? So this is basically developing. And also they develop their own network of the business services. And if they are talking about outside connections, most of them are actually not using Hong Kong. You can see over here, most of them are going to Shanghai and also Beijing, right? So you can see the competitive advantage of Hong Kong producer services is already declining. But also on top of that, there are a lot of changes in the development of the China's economy that actually threaten this type of relationships. Now, this is the relationship between Hong Kong and the mainland China, right? When 1980, when we compare our GDP with the whole of China, actually we were 15.3%, but now actually has decreased only to 2.8. And so you can see how important Hong Kong is now, right? And also there's a marked change since year 2010. That was a little bit like 10 years ago. Right? China, the total GDP moved from 3 to the rank number 2 in 2013. And that means that they are having a lot of money now, right? The growth of the GDP also between Hong Kong and the PRD, and you will find that actually by 2004, the total volume of the GDP is already surpassed Hong Kong already. And this is the projections we did in 2006. So by 1980, actually there is still a big gap between PRD and Hong Kong, right? And also when the study is going on in year 2000, we will find that there is still a time gap. But we can see by 2025, we are using the 23,000 US dollar per capita as a benchmark. So by 2025, they should have reached it. But in fact, they have done it already, right? By 2017, they already have 18,000 US dollar per capita. And Hong Kong, obviously, we have already also grown faster, right? And so now the situation is now China is the second largest GDP in the world. And for per capita GDP, you can also see that now the PRD is rising very rapidly. Shenzhen is already 27,000. and Guangzhou is also 23,000. So our prediction is more or less correct. That means that they have a lot of spending power now, right? And also looking at the share in terms of the GDP in the world, and you will see that in the old days, this is the reason why China have to export a lot of products to the major advanced economies. But now by 2016 or whatever, you will find that China is already rising very quickly to become a very important buying country, right? And also, if we look at the economic transitions in the developed world, well, you can see that in the early days, you basically have manufacturing, and then later, the kind of the manufacturing, the growth of the producer services or business services. This is happening also in China as well, right? You can see over here, right? And so basically by 2014, the services industries, there's quite a major jump, right? And this is also happening, particularly in the PRD. So you can see by 2016, you have more services compared to the manufacturing, although the agriculture declined most, right? And also the terms of industrial development in the 1980s, when Hong Kong industry moved to the Pearl Delta, it's mainly the old type of industries, this type of assembly line, low value product. But China, like the PRD, in the year 2000s, they already developed this so-called industrial industry 3.0. And so they see about information revolution. For example, you can see like Huawei and also like Tencent. These are the some of these type of giant now, right? And also they also are now going into Industrial Revolution 4 with robotics, with this type of drugs, etc. Right? Okay, so they are moving not only in industries, the industries also transform a lot. And if you look into the early days of Dongguan, which is only we have Shenzhen and then Dongguan, used to be in 1978 to 2004, strongly influenced by the Hong Kong industries. But by 2010, this is already highly influenced by the high-tech industries of Shenzhen already. Okay, and also you can see here the growth rate of the high-tech industries in Shenzhen growing very fast. And also in China, we have also in 2020, we have this so-called dual circulations of the economy, right? And this is also changing where in the 1980s, 1990s, the market mainly is in the Western world, and now is also using both the domestic as well as foreign, right? And also there is this type of trade war going on that will also affect this relationship between Hong Kong and the PRD. And also the state government, Chairman Xi Jinping already supports Shenzhen to have a demonstration zone to have a new type of experiment going on since the early experiment in 1978, right? And also in 2020, they have signed this regional comprehensive economic partnership, and this is also changing the whole regional economy in Asia as well, right? So what are the future opportunities in the GBA? So basically, it will be shifting the focus from Europe and the US to China. And also, how can we make use of the great development opportunities in mainland China? And also, how can we help mainland China to go outside, right? To become the foreign direct investment, and also high-tech development, Silicon Valley of South China, etc. And also the One Belt, One Road, new globalizations, and also the new what they call RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Agreement, right? Now, finally, I would just like to tell you a little bit about the findings of our report that we have, the chairman have mentioned about, right? So if you are interested in it, this is a barcode over here. You can QR code, you can scan, and you can get the final report. Basically, in our study, we are trying to look into 4 different models. One is to trying to develop Hong Kong to be an innovation center, and also trying to ride on the affluent mainland Chinese and help mainland China to go global, and also how to enhance our traditional role of producer services. But today, I would like to highlight one thing which is new. which is not in the year 2000s type of policy address in terms of the new development of Hong Kong. This is really new one. It's basically how can we become a science and technology center in the GBA. This is the model replacing the front shops, back factories model, right? And so we already talked about, the changes in the Pearl Delta from this type of industry 2.0 from Hong Kong to this type of industry 4.0 from Shenzhen, right? And Hong Kong will actually do have this type of potentials because we have 4 universities that are among the top 100 universities, and we have state labs, etc. Right? But if we look at our downside, actually, in terms of the patent that we are having, you can see this is Shenzhen. They are much higher than Hong Kong. So we have very good research, but we, in terms of productions, we are falling behind, and also in terms of commercializations of the products, right? And so also you can see the reason why we are not doing that well in terms of R&D, because we only spend around only 0.8%, right? Whereas the Shenzhen, etc., they spend over 5%, right? And so in terms of the total amount, you can see because their GDP is close to Hong Kong, so they are spending much more money than us, right? And one of the major findings that we are having is a lot of the PRD, they are not using Hong Kong technology, although we are the top universities, right? They are not using it, right? And also they are also not using Hong Kong types of producer services. So this is something that is very alarming, right? Okay, and so this is something that we have to, and there are certain reasons why they are not using Hong Kong technology. First of all, probably this is the reason for using it because we still have a very competitive edge. But the reasons for not using it because they don't have an understanding of what we're doing, and also the technological cooperation cost is too high, and also about communications, etc. Right? So these are the problems that we are going to face. Okay, so there are a number of policy implications that we are suggesting, right? Maybe I can just show it to you, and I'm not going to read it out. Basically, it's something that we have to do re-industrialization, right? Trying to have the high-tech industries to work together with the universities. And one thing that I think we also need to do is to try to increase the flow of people from PRD to Hong Kong. We are proposing since year 2001, this PRD, or now called the GBA, Business and Research Visa Encounters, where people can really get like going to get a visa from Australia. We can get it from the electronic way, right? Rather than now we have to apply, right? And then when you go through it, you can have a special counter to facilitate people going there. And we can also have front shops, back offices. Basically, Hong Kong businesses can set up, this type of front desk to get business from mainland China, and then the processing side, like the lawyer, and also the marketing, etc., can be done in Hong Kong, right? And Hong Kong actually is doing the right way now. At least we are trying to have like Inno Hong Kong by the Innovation and Technology Bureau. So basically, we are going the right directions, but there are still a lot of things that we need to cooperate. And also another major changes going on. It was in November last year, we have this Northern Metropolis Development Strategy, not only trying to use policy, but also doing land development. So this is something that is going to happen in the next 20 to 30 years. It is very exciting, right? And one thing that I want to conclude over here, people have been talking about whether Guangzhou will become Chicago, whether Shenzhen will become, and Hong Kong will become Manhattan and New York, where the Greater Bay Area will become the Silicon Valley, because we have universities and we have the productions over here in the PRD. But this is all question mark, and maybe this is something that we can think about in this webinar. Thank you very much for your attention, and sorry for running over time.
Thank you, Professor Ye. We'll go immediately to Professor Hu. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everybody. Now, we just heard Anthony give a very comprehensive presentation about GBA, and the story is GBA developed from China's early open door policy to urbanization, industrial revolution, and economic transformation. And Hong Kong, Macau as special administrative region play special roles. And Anthony gave a good story about Hong Kong, and I would focus on Macau since I'm now living in Macau now. So Macau compared with Hong Kong is a quite different story. I remember Anthony's last word is if Guangzhou can be compared as the role of Chicago, and Hong Kong, Shenzhen will be like a New York areas. Whole PRD can be, play the similar role like future Silicon Valley. But whether Macau can live up to that expectation is a big question mark. So I'd like to focus on Macau's future vision for its development. Now, Macau, let me show you where's Macau. Here, we're on the west side of the PRD. So we're very tiny, we're very small. If PRD is such a big area, how large is Macau? So most people don't know. Let me just tell you, Macau's land area only 32.9 square kilometers. We only have 680,000 people, so it's very small. Now, so how should I characterize Macau's role in the PRD development? There are a few things. If you're familiar with the national plan for the PRD development released in 2019, in that plan, there are few major strategy, or how should I say, the vision outline given to think about the PRD. Especially for Macau, we are one of the 4 core cities of PRD or GBA. These 4 core cities, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and Macau. So Zhuhai is not one of the core cities. So Macau is one of them. There's reason for that. Now, if you're familiar with the core cities, you can imagine the role of core cities. Now, the core cities tend to have radiative roles to develop itself and influence the neighboring areas, and also developing the linkage with other core cities or neighboring cities. So we have to think about how Macau link up with other cities. The other thing is we have to consider Macau is on the other side of the PRD. So it's a little bit far away from Shenzhen, Hong Kong, although there's a bridge and the Bay Bridge, but still we are a little bit out, the other side, far away. And also the west side of PRD used to be relatively less developed than the east side. So we have to pair up with Zhuhai, and I'll compare Zhuhai with Shenzhen. You will see the difference. Now, so what's the future vision for Macau's development? There are a few things I would say outlined in the national strategy. First, it is a core city. So the core city have to live up to play the role as a core engine for the regional development. And then the core city will leverage its comparative advantage for excellence, and also to have radiating effect on the neighboring areas. So Macau is expect to play that radiating effect roles to influence, to show up the neighboring area like Zhuhai. Now, if you read into the national plan 2019, it gives Macau or it visualized Macau to play at least 3 major roles. First, Macau is expected to develop into a world-class tourism and the leisure centers. Leisure centers. The Macau is one of the biggest gambling center in the world. Second role Macau is expected to play is to be a commerce and a trade cooperation service platform between China and the Lusophone countries. You know, we have a natural advantage. The people here are speaking Portuguese. We have the language advantage to linking with the Lusophone countries. So it's the China's bridge to go to the Lusophone world. The third role Macau is expected to play is to develop into a base for exchange and cooperation where Chinese culture is the mainstream. And then there also in Macau, there's a diverse culture coexist together. So that's this is the reality of Macau. It's a city mixed with Chinese culture, with the Portuguese culture and other culture from the different countries. So giving these roles, what's the difficulty for Macau to play these roles? Why the central government expect Macau to play this role? And actually, Macau is expected to have a major transformation in the future. Why? Because Macau, the economic structure is solely depends on the gambling industries, or the gaming industry is the major pillars for the economy. So I think for the future, Macau need to promote economic diversification to diversify its economic development. So that's the major thing for the future Macau. So by this graph, you can see the three major expectations. So the future vision for Macau to develop, go forward, is to diversify its economy and also have a deep and intensive cooperation with Zhuhai and then with other cities in the GBA. Now, let's go back to the review Macau's economic structure. You can see on this slide, Macau's economy mainly depends on tourism. And tourism also show up other service sectors like retail, transportation, hospitality, hotel, and then entertainment business. So Macau, since it depends on tourism and the service industry, its economy is very fragile. It's fluctuate. This is the growth rate. We have a high growth rate after the 2008 financial crisis, and then dropped sharply around 2015 because the crackdown on the individual tourism from mainland to Macau, and then rise up again. And then after the pandemic hit Macau, so the drop up again. So this is the this table shows the Macau's actually as a casino center is one of the largest in the world, larger than Las Vegas, its revenue, and larger than Australia, Singapore, and the Philippines. Now, everybody knows the pandemic hit us very hard. So last 2 years, the economy in terms of government revenue, because the major source of revenue coming from the gaming industry dropped almost 70%. Now, for the future, Macau, as I said, we need to diversify the economic structure. And we need to look across the river how we can develop a new model to have a more in-depth and extensive cooperation with Zhuhai. Now, the new things need to be watched is how we collaborate with Zhuhai to develop Macau's economy and economic diversification. Now, in the 2019 national plan, there's a new project called Hengqin Guangdong Macau In-Depth Cooperation Zone was planned. So this is the area of the in-depth cooperation zone. This zone is 106 square kilometers, much larger than Macau. Now, this is Macau. Actually, we are 3 little islands and then connected by bridges, and then cross river is the Hengqin. So the future Macau is how we can develop more in-depth cooperation to take advantage of Hengqin's development, to develop Macau, to diversify Macau's economic structure. So if we can take advantage of Hengqin's development, Macau's future will be bright. So how we can use Hengqin to develop Macau? This is the future plans to develop new industries to help Macau's economic further diversified. What is the new industries we're trying to develop? There are 4 new economic sectors. First is the science and technology, R&D, and high-end manufacturing. So universities play large roles in here to develop new R&D and then new high-tech project for Hengqin. The second is traditional Chinese medicine product. And in the University of Macau, we have a state key lab to develop new traditional Chinese medicine product, and also doing the quality check for the Chinese medicine product. The third sectors we're trying to develop is to further link Macau's tourism and the leisure industry with Hengqin's culture and tourism and a convention and exhibitions. So this is another area we are developing. And then the fourth one is the modern finance. So we're talking about the future. Maybe we use Hengqin and also open up Macau's financial systems to take advantage of the one country, two systems, free port system, to have a kind of bond market, even the Nasdaq type of stock market for venture industries. Now, the Hengqin also could play the role for Macau to provide more space for Macau residents to live there, to work there. And also, the last thing I want to highlight is between Macau and Hengqin's cooperation, there's a new governing institution for co-management. Actually, there's a new institution set up for the co-development. Now, the new institutions in Hengqin is actually Macau will play the leading role, led by the Macau government and the business leaders. We decide economic system, legal system, the commerce system, and then what project we want to develop there. So Hengqin, the mainland side, play the supporting roles. So this is really a new institutional innovation. So it's worth to look at. So I will stop here for the sake of time, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Professor Hu. And we will turn things over immediately to Professor Andrew Chan.
Okay, the title of my presentation is called The Next Explosive Leap with GBA Policies. And then as a subtitle is Where Do We Go From Here? Basically, Anthony has set the scene for me to continue. So it seems to us that somehow we are reaching a plateau. And if not a plateau, it's a crossroad. So the key question is what to do next. This is a very important document in 2019 February, outline development plan for Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. This policy was promulgated. And then let me touch upon some of the basic principles there. They are very important in the sense that, just like examination, the people will set the syllabus. And then when they check on you whether you are doing a good job or not, they will simply look at whether you know the answers to all these questions. First of all, it's driven by innovation. So innovation is one. And point number two is to plan holistically, whether people can coordinate together. Richard also mentioned a bit about how different places got coordinated, Hengqin, Zhuhai, perhaps maybe Zhongshan, and all that, how you integrate different places together in order to form a good plan. The third thing, green development and ecological, the ESG concept. The fourth one, win-win outcome. So win-win outcome is not easy to achieve, but this is that's the expectation, opening up. And then share benefits. It's not just development, whether people's livelihood would be benefited. And then adhering to one country, two systems. These are difficult questions, but somehow I think a lot of people have not picked that up. And seems to me that a lot of people are still waiting. Waiting for what? Perhaps waiting for government to tell them what to do. I think that's problematic. So let us look at the key impacts of the development plan. I think basically when you see President Xi standing in front of the camera and then people signing the policy paper in front of him, you know this is big stuff. It's not just a joke. And then country and everybody, the key officials, I have high expectation on that. But seemingly, according to my limited research analysis with my colleagues, I don't think it is live up to people's expectation. From theory, this is unleashing of potentials, the market, the talent, the land, and the capital. Basically, it's great opportunity. And there are so many ways we can cooperate, like Shenzhen, Hong Kong, Macau, Guangzhou, whatnot. But somehow we don't see, in Chinese, it's something called the thunder, sounds very loud, but somehow we don't see any rain. But there are exceptions. I think the higher education sector is capitalizing on this announcement. You can see there are 8 great universities in Hong Kong, and then 6 commence their operation, or maybe starting to wake up and try to do something after 2019. Baptist was the first university going to Zhuhai, and then CUHK in Shenzhen, and then you have Hong Kong University in Guangzhou, City University in Dongguan, Hong Kong Polytechnic U in Foshan, and Metropolitan University, Shaoqing, University of Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and also Mainland University, Shenzhen. And all this happens after 2019. So these are physical help and also psychological help. You know, the country is looking forward. A lot of people have high expectations. And then universities, seems to me that they are the first bunch of people want to capitalizing that. But of course, I don't know whether they are under political pressure to do so. But seemingly, they are doing fine. And then a lot of them are running pretty well. The next one I'm going to touch upon will be wealth management. Just now, Anthony has mentioned that we are not in very good state in the sense that producer services are falling. But seems to me that somehow a lot of people have not capitalizing on like the finance side. Hong Kong is in the international financial center, wealth management, insurance, fintech, whatnot. But Hong Kong MA, Hong Kong Monetary Authority, has orchestrated all this. And then they developed something called the Cross-Border Wealth Management Connection Scheme. And then southbound and also northbound. Southbound for eligible residents in mainland GBA cities, and then northbound for eligible residents in Hong Kong, Macau. They start doing something, but comparing to expectations, it is still not strong enough, I would say. Construction engineering will be another one. That's from Guangdong Housing Estate and Urban Rural Development Bureau. The Hong Kong Construction Engineering Company practicing engineering construction advising services in the 9 GBA cities. Basically, this is great news, but the problem, of course, is COVID, and then it's difficult for us to cross the border. And then fintech, it is a tale of three cities. bureaus of Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and also Macau, financial regulatory. So usually we don't see regulatory body taking a very active role, but somehow they are joining forces together and then trying to do something, at least on fintech professional programs like training, examination, certifications, legal profession. And then that's from very, very high up. It's National Assembly of PRC, the examination of solicitors and barristers. Basically, they are trying to lift all those hurdles, point fines, and then open up, breaking everything. But the thing is, even though when the doors are open, do we have a game plan? Do we have a strategy there? And then Qianhai would be another model called cooperation zone. And then inside Qianhai, you can do whatever thing. No, I'm just kidding. There's course recognition of professional qualifications, lawyers, accountants, tax, engineers, medical, tourists, and all that. If that can be expanded, there will be a lot of potentials. Okay, let us take an interim body check. How powerful are these GBA policies? Using the outline developed plan in 2019 as a frame of reference, innovation. Do we see a lot of innovations? Not forceful enough. Holistic development, piecemeal. Green and ecological. Cannot find a lot of examples. Achieving win-win outcome driving from opening up, yet to be seen, and development leading to improvement people's livelihood. Perhaps another confounding factor might be the COVID issue, and then we cannot travel freely, and well, of course, everybody would put the blame on COVID. I think future research and future strategies is much needed. And then, according to the preliminary analysis of my research team, we are not there yet. Another point, to us, I think the real gist lies on a little word called strategy. To us, if the strategic readiness of companies are high, that would be very powerful. Companies having a clear GBA strategy. GBA strategy is not simple. Just when we listen to Richard, and then you know it's comprising different places, your strong point, my strong points, how my strong points will help your weak points. Is integrating a lot of things together. You need a master plan. You need great people. You need people not selfish, and then they want to create a better world. But for companies just having a GBA strategy without knowing those policies, still quite powerful. I mean the policy. If company is ready to creatively coping with this, my worry is that people are not having a strategy, and they are still waiting, watch and see, still learning without doing a lot of things that they should be doing. Not powerful at all. First of all, maybe I'll use my framework. I developed a little framework called left-right circle strategic framework. 2 capstone components: redefining company stakeholders. After redefining stakeholders, it's time for us to enhance company competence. So everything is new when you have 9+2. New customer, new partners, new investors, government and quasi non-governmental bodies, all totally different as compared just to Hong Kong. And consultancy companies, their role and all that. And we are not forceful, we are not planning enough, we are not talking enough. And company competences. And then we have to look out for how to improve the competitiveness. And leadership, we have to change because we have to define where to go and how to go there. And channel development, market informations, and also relationship with relevant government bureaus. This is hard work, but it works. Perhaps I'll take a little case like my GBA business school as an example. We defining student segments. Say, for example, in the old days, students mainly from Hong Kong. But now, if that's GBA kind of focus, we need students from Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and also Macau, at least the core cities. I learned from Richard. And then the relevant policy, not at the present moment, not in place, accreditation, student visas, so on and so forth. So it's a totally different program. We cannot wait for other people telling us what to do. You define it, and then you find ways to see how policy can help you. If existing policy cannot help you, you just go to different bureaus, different NGOs, different departments, and then trying to do things that can alleviate those issues. enhancing our ability. In the old days, as a university teacher, we did economic strategy, intelligence, accounting, and finance. No, now if that's GBA focus, that got to be GBA relevance and practicality and mega networking. It's not just teaching and learning. It's networking with different people, web-like. Say, for example, the Mainland policy might be permission to teach. Are we permitted to teach that? I don't think we are permitted to be the tourist guide. And then build premises in Shenzhen. Wow, big stuff. So you have to find partners out there. But who are your partners? Then you need to do a lot of groundwork. And then cost content approval issue. So our recommendation, my final slide, is a change in mindset. For enterprises, it's from passive to proactive. From silo mindset to enterprising, comprising like the idea, production, prototype, financing, commercialization, pre-IPO, IPO, moving out, 走出去, that means a deal circulation. And then from one-to-one transaction approach, we're used to that. And then I produce shop and factory, all those kind of things. It should be a super networking kind of approach. It's very complex, but it's worth the while. And then sometimes people like my good self are sort of too theoretical, and then we have to adopt a pragmatic mindset. So I would like to conclude by citing two little phrases from region to panorama, but with the hope of together we can build a better world. I hope we can form a better world with our united together. The situations today, like the Michael Self, like Anthony, and also Richard, and also the Kenny, Mark, and then when we join forces together, hopefully we can create a better world. That will conclude my my presentation. I'll pass the floor back to Kenny.
Thanks very much. So those were three really interesting presentations. We have a lot of questions and not a whole lot of time, so I will just go very quickly to some of the questions that have been submitted. And the first one asks, do Hong Kong and Macau need to accelerate opening up in order for GBA plans to succeed? And I think this is probably a question that all of our panelists can say something about. Andrew, do you want to start?
Oh, why not? I think Richard should start first.
Okay.
but never mind. Perhaps I say something and then Richard can supplement.
Okay.
I think it's not a matter of opening up. It's a matter of our sitting together and put our heads together and see how Hong Kong and Macau can create something from zero base. And then say, for example, conference like tourism, culture, Cantonese opera, and those art form. And then Hong Kong, we are good at what? And then how we can integrate. And then moving something to the outside world. And then I think we need a master plan first. And then Macau, Hengqin, and also Zhuhai, and Hong Kong, mixing with who? For culture, perhaps with Foshan, and then they're good in Cantonese opera. So we need a master plan instead of opening up. And then of course, when we have our master plan, and then we can go to proper bureaus asking for help, unleashing that opening up. So that would be my idea. So Richard, how would you see it?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Andrew have said. I think not just opening up, but probably for Hong Kong and Macau, more integrate into the development of a GBA. And we have a master plan now, but the thing is how we can follow up and further open up our mindset to embrace this GBA development. And then so there are a lot of things people in Hong Kong and Macau need to do is probably we need to change our perception, old perception of the our neighboring cities, and then how the GBA will play in the future Macau and Hong Kong's development. And then another thing is I think a lot of subtle things pop up to either impeding or helping the the further integration. You know, there's a subculture difference between people in Macau and Hong Kong and people in the mainland. So we need to really really change the old stereotype of perception of each other. We need to change our own systems. You know, for Macau, I've been living here for some years. I have a lot of experience of how you know, the old institutional constraints for people to do things much more efficient, and how we can cooperate with the people across the border. So that's something we really need to change ourselves.
I think I agree with Andrew and also with Richard. I basically, you know, Hong Kong and Macau is already a very open society. What we need to is to change the mentality to open up us to the Pearl Delta, to the Greater Bay Area. Well, a lot of people in Hong Kong still think that the PRD part of the GBA is like what happens in the 1980s, 1990s. But actually things have changed. And so we have to open up our mind to meet the challenges and also to face a reality that is the GBA has changed. Basically, I mean the PRD side, right? And this is something, I think this is what we need to open up our own minds, right? In terms of opening up to the whole world, we have been doing it already. And I think one of the challenge that we are now facing is how can we, you know, tell the whole world that Hong Kong and Macau is just like the old days, right, where we actually have the free economy, everything is all open up, right? And I think this is also a really big challenge of us trying to sustain our openness. I mean, the image, right?
Can I supplement a little bit?
Sure.
I think at least after listening to Richard, I think at least 3 areas we can work on: tourism and leisure center. Coming here for business and then going to Macau and then having leisure, tourism, moving to Zhuhai. I think that's a very good coalition. And culture and cultural exchange is very important. You just mentioned that there are differences, but differences will lead to improvement. And then see how those differences, when we integrate that together, they can come up with a great story. I think your connection with Zhuhai, so close to Zhuhai, and it would be a definite advantage. From that regard, I think Macau, Zhuhai is closer than Hong Kong and Shenzhen in that particular perspective. So that would be it. But I would like to touch upon another point is I think government has done enough. Enterprises have not. There are two other dimensions like academia and also research bodies and consultants. I think they should pick up and then they should start doing like the policy research at least, and then do some commission research and then trying to do things along that manner. It's not just sitting there waiting for enterprises telling them what to do. And then especially for academia, it's so difficult for me to find like Richard and also Anthony. And then they have the heart, they have the desire of running things along that dimension, because those are studies would help actually the people living in this particular location, in this region. So pass the mic back to Kenneth.
That actually flows rather nicely into one of our other questions, which was an audience member asked what Hong Kong in particular can do to facilitate growth in research and development. Professor Yes showed us that slide that showed lots of research activity, relatively few patents. And that seemed quite interesting. So I don't know if any of you want to talk specifically about policies to encourage R&D, maybe especially in Hong Kong, but throughout the Greater Bay Area.
I think one thing that is Hong Kong and also Macau, right, are very, fortunate. Actually, we are developing into really good universities, even for Macau U and also the Macau University of Science and Technology is rising very fast, right? Hong Kong, obviously, we have a few very top university in the world, right? And so we are going to sustain that, and everybody knows our advantage now over China is because of our universities now, right? Now the whole thing is about how can we capitalize this and how can we work together with the manufacturing side in the PRD. And so this is a major challenge. Right? I think there are a number of policies that we have to think about whether have we actually done enough to encourage our researchers to commercialize their products. At present, I think there are a lot of barriers. I don't want to spend time on this, but I can tell you that there are a lot of barriers preventing us from doing it, right? And the other thing is, how can the industries in the PRD know about our research and development and try to make use of our work? At present, it's so difficult for them to come to Hong Kong. So this is the reason why we've been always advertising for the mainland researchers in the PRD and the businessmen in the PRD. They should be able to apply for an electronic visa through the internet. Just like when if you're going to Australia, going to Canada, you have, or even go to Taiwan, right? You can do it, apply for visa electronically. And then when you cross the border, you don't have to wait with, not line up with all the tourists. You have a special counter like the APEC counter, and you can just, Hong Kong should welcome them, in terms of open arm. And there should be a special counter called the GBA counter, because this is the so-called placemaking and place marketing. I think Andrew knows a lot about this. This is like certain types of advertising, right? For saying that we are actually in a Greater Bay Area. Unfortunately, we have been advocating for that for over 20 years. Nothing happened. Hoping that it will happen soon.
Can I supplement what Anthony have said? I think why there's a lot of basic research and fewer patents in the GBA. I think Anthony and I both work in the universities. We know the university system very well. First, university assessment system. If that assessment system not change, we'll still have such a situation, very few patents. Because university, we encourage people to do basic research. We look at article citations, impact factors. We look at those indicators to do the academic assessment. So a second thing is the funding model. A lot of our funding, the money coming from the government agents, from the research agencies. So if we can have more funding from industries, and then more research will be practical oriented research. So that probably will lead more patents. And also, I think we currently, GBA is not Silicon Valley. We don't have such a ecosystem, technological ecosystem, encourage people to do more practical project to have more patents. So there are a lot of things need to be changed so that GBA could be next Silicon Valley in the future.
Can I supplement? I think we have hit the head of the nail. Universities in Hong Kong are top-notch universities when you look at the QS ranking. But somehow, after doing a lot of work, gaining a lot of honor, but somehow you don't see a lot of them being able to translate or transmit into like real products and all that. So Anthony in his paper talk about 0 to 1 and then from 1 to 100 and all that. University, they publish. And then when they're successful, and then they publish another paper. And then there is no system there helping putting those findings into ideas, into innovation, and helping to develop into prototypes and all that. Even though a lot of young people, they want to be an entrepreneur and then they want to do something like that, but the system is not there. No incentive. The incentive is if you do something like that, I'll take away like 90% of your return and whatever. So we should learn from at least Stanford and Silicon Valley. That's the concept. And then professors can join forces with students and working on a lot of things. And then that kind of open up, perhaps it's government or university grants commission or council. That's another major idea. Without this kind of transcending from basic knowledge all the way to product prototype commercializations and then IPO, is a waste of a lot of resources in the economy. So, and then for Hong Kong, I think we have not utilized enough Hong Kong as an international financial center. It's a good financial center itself per se, but integrating, at least with Macau a lot of money in the old days, right? And the use of those money, instead of distributing that to citizens, how to use those funds in the most profitable, meaningful way. And then offshore renminbi, asset management, and then we should develop along that line. It's not just Hong Kong. It's Hong Kong come what? And then they come, and then the variable X is very important. And perhaps sometimes with X and Y. I think Hong Kong, Macau, we can join force at least in that dimension. Perhaps I'll stop here.
Okay, I think we have time for only one more question, but we've got a big one, which is somebody asked about leadership of planning and whether the government's role is at this point not, whether they're not strongly leading enough leading, whether they're leading too much and should leave more to the private sector. Are there changes in the planning process as opposed to the planning outcomes that you think are important?
Can I go first?
Of course.
I think government, China, Hong Kong, and government in different locations, I think they have done enough. They want to develop, just when you look at all those 6 guidelines and all that, the guidelines are not there. If you are doing things that's close to those guidelines, they would help you in whatever manner. But it is the strategic readiness of those people. Strategic readiness is not just government, the enterprise, academic, and also the research people, professional people, all 4 of them should join force together and then do something that's earth-shaking. And they just keep things in the vicinity, bean counting, and then earning easy money. But earning easy money would not have big progress. So some people got to lead, and then some people might be government, or maybe some people high up in government, some people commanding respect in business, just like Victor Fong, and also people in academia. I think people in academia are not doing enough in this regard. So difficult for us to find comrades, to find people that we can talk to, we can work with. So Anthony or perhaps Richard can share my feeling. And then the legal dispute resolutions and all this, they are all there. It's precious, a lot of things. It's not whether leadership in government. Government, they cannot go to that level. All they can do is open the door. But whether you have a strategy there, just like Peter Drucker said, is doing the right thing, doing the things right. We are all, a lot of people are doing the things right, but not doing the right thing. The right thing relates to customer of tomorrow, what's in their mind, what they want. But actually, if you ask them, they may not be able to tell you, but somehow it's deep in their heart when you produce the right sort of things. So that's business. I think we have to go back to business 101, strategy 101, in order to do a good job.
Let me follow up. I agree with Andrew. I just want to say, if you say the government leadership is not strong enough, you can find a lot of evidence or argument to support this. If you say the government leadership is too strong, you can also find evidence to support it. So this is a very tricky question. This is a question about what is the right fit between the invisible hand and the visible hand. Now, over last few decades of PRD development or now GBA development, we can find support on both sides. And sometimes we find the driving force from the very beginning, from 1970s, late 70s and 80s. The driving force was market force. Market, as Anthony showed us earlier, market bring the Hong Kong and then the other cities of PRD together, the front shop and the back factories, so those are market force, bring us together, promote the economic integration. And but at certain point, the market force will hit the plateau or hit hit some, you reach the threshold, you cannot get a breakthrough. So here we need government to jump in, to give us direction, to give us more policy freedom to do more things. So I think what is the right mixture of government regulation and then the market marketization, the free market force is a big issue. We need to carefully study it. I think now at this new phase of GBA development, the central government show the vision, show the master plans, but it will depend on the local government at the lower level, at the provincial level, even regional level government, to give us more concrete, detailed guidance how to do things cross the border, especially between Hong Kong, Macau, and the cities in Guangdong. And then here we need more market force, bring in talent, bring in more capital, bring more technology. And then here, so find the right mixture and how the invisible and the visible hand will fit. That's the tricky questions.
It's really tricky, this question, right? Because I think, like say, if we ask ourselves in the 1980s, in the 1990s, where the Pearl Delta and Hong Kong developed like hell, right? Very fast, right? There's no government, right? The only government is that China give the policy for these industries to boom, right? And also because they have this really great competitive advantage of cheap land, cheap labor, and also there's the market outside, right? And so basically, you don't even have to do anything. The Hong Kong government is always falling behind, right? You can still remember the traffic congestions in the total highway, etc. Right? The government is failing, right? But the whole thing is growing when the government was failing. And now the government, since 2001, when Mr. Dong Jinhua is trying to do something, and somehow after 20 years, we are still trying to search our soul to try to do things that we are now doing. So I think this is a very difficult question. Obviously, at a certain point of time, we always find that the leadership is very important of the government, right? And also the type of civil servants, their mindset is also very important. It's not only the private sector, because the private sector, if they can make money, they will go anywhere, right? So it is, I think, they know the market, but unfortunately, a lot of them do not want to take the risk, right? And so that is the thing. But in China, it's a little bit different because China actually have a lot of government support, and since they are at a very low level of economic development, a lot of people are willing to take the risk and they just boom, right? And so I think this is a very tricky question. It's difficult to say, but increasingly you will find that the government in Hong Kong and even in Macau are putting in a lot of work compared to 1980s and compared to 1990s. But unfortunately, because the tide has changed, the total geopolitics and also the global economy, regional economy is very different from that in the 1980s and 1990s. And so now we get ourselves into great trouble, and it will be haunting us, and it will be, some sort of big challenge to us for the next 20 to 30 years, unfortunately.
I think the real gist to me is government and business people are two different groups of people, having different mindset, having different rationale. For government people, they talk about fairness, balancing, they talk about governance. They shouldn't give people a concept that government and business are colluding and all that. They're very concerned about all this. But for business people, they want specific treatment, uniqueness, and somehow that's kind of tailor-made to their need. I think there is still another group of people that can help, being the matchmaker and lubricant, the think tank, the consultative commissions, and the press and academic people. They can talk about things that appealing to the conscience, and then appealing to their research findings. And then in that sense, if they can group together and then they can speak from the bottom of their heart without concerns and all that, perhaps that would change the issue. Without changing that particular mentality, I think we don't have any mileage at all. And then there's still, I think even though with the new CE, the same mentality will be there. Let's play safe. Let's don't touch. Let's don't go too far. And then business people, of course, they want this, they want that, but they don't have a vehicle. I think all those like academic people, research, think tank, those people will be able to lend a helping hand. We are just speaking from the bottom of our heart with research support.
I'm afraid that is all we have time for. I want to thank all our speakers for a really fascinating program. Thank you to the audience, and have a pleasant rest of the evening or morning, wherever you happen to be. And I'll turn things back to Mark.
Thank you so much, Ken. That was a great program. Andrew, Richard, Anthony, your insights into the GBA were fantastic. Very dynamic conversation. I really appreciate you all joining us for the lively discussion tonight. We have a brief poll on tonight's program for the audience on Zoom. If you're watching our live Facebook or YouTube pages, you can leave your answers in the comments below. And while you complete the survey, let me tell you more about the program we have next week, which will be joined by a professor from CUHK. He'll be joined by Professor Philip Bowman from the University of Chicago. We'll be talking about the new book launch of Sonic Mobilities, talking about this contemporary music scene of Southern China. So a nice extension from our conversation about the GBA today. Make sure to follow us on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and the UN Campus website for further information, and tune in to listen to our upcoming event. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you so much for joining us. Good night.